What's up guys, today I'm going to walk you through a quick and basic edit of one of my favorite shots I took at last week's Kalani session. Firstly, I'm going to quickly tell you about the settings I used and why I chose those settings to take this photo. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into my thinking just before I took the shot. So I shot with my Canon 70D and I set the ISO to 100 as I used the flash to fill in the subject. And I didn't want to create any unnecessary noise in the background or in the dark spots of the photo. I set the shutter speed to 1/80th of a second to create a nice motion blur in the background and a little bit of blur on the subject. As I said, I shot with a Speedlite Flash on the hot shoe of my camera, and the purpose of the flash is not only to fill in the subject but also to freeze the subject in the frame, while the slow shutter speed still creates the motion blur in the background. And I think my flash was set at 1/16th of a second. I had my aperture set at f4 and I wasn't too worried about going any higher as I was very close to the riders coming past, so I didn't have to worry about much depth of field. I shot with my lens wide open all the way at 10mm, as for these types of shots I shoot from the hip, so I don't really know exactly if the subject's going to be in the center of the frame. But obviously the more you shoot these types of shots, the more you get to learn about where exactly to position yourself and where exactly to position your camera. And now onto the post-production or editing of the photo. I use Adobe Photoshop Lightroom Classic, which is widely used and probably the most popular piece of editing software for batch editing photos. I'll just reset everything so you can see the original format of the photo straight out the camera. So for the white balance, I generally shoot auto in camera and then adjust it afterwards in post-production, and I think we will use daylight for this photo, and that looks all good. Then for the exposure, we'll bump that up until we're happy, and about 0.6 looks good. Then for the contrast, we'll bump that up slowly as well until we're happy, and plus 20 looks good. Then for the highlights, we'll bring that down just to get back a little bit of detail in the helmet and the shoes. Then for the shadows, I generally go exactly opposite to the highlights, so we'll bring that up to about plus 20. That's looking good so far. Then for the whites, just to create a bit more of a punch in the helmet, shoes and socks, we'll bump that up, and plus 20 looks good for that as well. Then for the blacks, we'll bring that down slightly, not too much. -5 looks great. Then for texture and clarity, I like to use 10 on both of them. That looks good. Then for the dehaze, we won't bump that up too much, but just add a little bit more contrast. So 5 looks great. Then for vibrance and saturation, I'll go plus 10 on the vibrance and just plus 5 on the saturation. Then lastly, for the tone curve, I like to use a bit of a S curve. So we'll bring the highlights up a little bit, but then bring the shadows back down. That looks good. And that's it for this photo, guys. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now YouTube. And I'll see you guys around.